My name is Steven Pasinsky, and I was a producer on Back Off Me Booty. Back Off Me Booty is a collaborative seesaw shooter in which ye and your matey must protect your collective booty from pesky landlubbers. You do so using a seesaw controller, which we've built in-house completely from scratch. And yeah, the gameplay is basically using the tilt of this seesaw in order to tilt your ship in-game and go through some on-rails levels in which you defeat enemies and try to stay alive.
So for the controller, we used materials that you could find at the store pretty easily. We went to Home Depot and kind of saw what they had. So for most of the support beams, they're made out of just the standard plywood 2x4s that you use for studs and houses. For the beam itself, we really wanted to emphasize safety and stability. So we went and looked at the options that we had, and we ended up settling on a 4x6 beam that is made for outdoor decking. We put a metal sheet underneath the bottom side of the seesaw because we didn't want the wood to be rubbing too hard on the beam and to rub away. So that helps with kind of managing the friction between the seesaw and the bar, while also maintaining the integrity of the beam itself to keep the safety of the seesaw.
So we use an Arduino attached to our seesaw that can read the angle of the seesaw and send that over to the computer. The Arduino has a built-in accelerometer, which, because we're using a relatively narrow range of angles, we don't need to calibrate that ever, which is really nice. So the Arduino takes that angle data, that's 3 digits of information, and it combines that with the digital inputs from the buttons, so it's either a 0 or a 1, and encodes that into a string and sends it over to the computer. In Unreal, we use some code to be able to read from the serial port to be able to take that data and then parse it within Unreal in the player controller. Initially, we wanted to use a plugin called the Unreal Serial Com plugin, but that caused some build issues for us, so we were able to create some code based off of that plugin to be able to read from the serial port and flush the serial port as necessary to be able to clean that out and make sure we are getting fresh inputs every time. Lots of tutorials.
Yeah, so as for our game design pillars, we can start with the fact that we wanted to encourage collaboration between players and just make sure that they were communicating, especially given that our game is using a seesaw controller. It makes things a lot more awkward if players aren't on the same page and if they're not necessarily following the natural flow that a seesaw would have in real life. We also wanted it to be frantic and physically challenging, just, so that players are constantly feeling like a sense of danger from these enemies that are trying to steal their loot. Next, we had emphasis on having an immersive environment plus controller. We wanted, and you can see that with our screen setup, for example. Each player has a screen behind one another. This is to mimic the sides of the ship. And with the seesaw itself, it's essentially mimicking a ship's tilting in the water from left to right. And then lastly, we wanted it to be a quick and easy to learn experience. We know that it's not a very accessible game. It's not one that you could, go to the game store and buy. So anybody that encounters it should be able to play the game, pick it up really quick, and just have a lot of fun with it at the end.
My name is Briton Flynn. I was one of the artists on the team for Back Off Me Booty. It was a really good project. We had a good team of artists working together. The visual theme for our project was we wanted something that had a global appeal. Something that we talk about in concept art is making something appealing to both kids and adults. So the way that our team achieved that was we did a sort of a blended visual style, similar to Overwatch, where the idea is you have simple 3D models, but you're adding a lot of visual detail in your textures and your VFX to make a lot of that really nice blended visual appeal when you're playing the game. The biggest challenge our team faced as we were working on art. The first challenge was to figure out scope, how much we wanted the game to have, how many enemies we wanted there to be in the levels. But once we got that figured out, the biggest challenge was building an environment that wasn't memory intensive for the game to run, but still had an immersive effect. So being able to make things like the rocks and pieces of a broken ship that could be procedurally generated in the water shader, but still not take a lot of energy from the engineering side.
Oh well, it's too late now.
But like anytime that someone doesn't tell me that there is an I don't know, anytime like I meet someone and I'm not like told that I know so oh well.
That's why we need to when a dog is scrunching in a stretching, yeah, we've been kind of not questioning, but like trying to get a lot of over there. You control we had
We can technically leave it till tomorrow.